Hi there, my name is Wendy, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make the double crochet stitch. I'm using UK stitches and follow UK stitch terminology, but if you're using American stitches, this is also known as single crochet in the USA. In the first part of this video, I'll be showing you how to actually make the double crochet stitch, and then in the second part of the video I'll show you how to make the double crochet stitch along a straight foundation chain, how to make the double crochet stitch in a ring if you're starting from a circle and a square, and what the symbol looks like if you're following a crochet chart. This is the right-handed version of the video, so if you're right-handed you are in the right place. If you're left-handed, I'm going to put a little pop-up here with a link to send you to the left-handed version of this video. So let's get going and make the double crochet stitch. So just before we start, you may have noticed that I've changed my crochet hook. All that was that the gold colour of the metal wasn't showing up that well against my yarn. So I'm using a 4mm crochet hook, and I've got some UK double knitting weight yarn that's in acrylic. So when we're making the double crochet stitch, there's two parts to making the stitch. There's the increasing part and the decreasing part. So we start with one stitch and we increase up to two, and then we decrease back down to one stitch again. And we'll be working in both sides of these V's. If you can see along here, I'm just going to put my hook through. You can see that there's a V shape, and we're going to go through both sides of that V. So it's not just the front and it's not just the back. Unless the pattern says so, you work through both sides of that V and you can pull it apart and see the gap in the middle. So I'm going to have my yarn to the back of my work, and when we're doing the yarn over motion, the yarn is coming up the back, over the top, down the front and to the back of the work again. So I'll do that again. So it comes up the back, over the top, down the front and to the back of the work. So that's called a yarn over or yarn over the hook. So to make my double crochet stitch, I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to put it through both sides of the next V. Then I'm going to make that yarn over motion or yarn over the hook. So I take the yarn up, over the front and down, and it's behind my work, and then I pull the hook back through to the front, and I now have two stitches on my hook. So I've increased from one stitch to two stitches. So that's the first part of my stitch complete. So for the second part of the stitch, I'm going to bring the yarn up, over the back, over the top, down the front again, or call it a yarn over, and then I'm going to pull the hook back and bring it through to one. So I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to take my hook through both sides of the next stitch. Okay, so I've got that V open. Then I'm going to take the yarn up, over the top and down the front of the hook and behind the work. And make sure when you're pulling your hook back that you start off with the hook actually looking at you, and then as you pull back you turn the hook downwards and you're scooping it through, catching the yarn. So I'm going to turn the hook down and scoop and catch the yarn, bringing it through, and I have the two stitches on my hook. So then yarn up, over, across, down, and then I can turn my hook down and scoop it back through. Okay, so we're going to do another one. So the hook goes through both sides of the stitch, the yarn comes up and over the hook, then I'm going to scoop back to two, and that's the first half of my stitch made, and now I'm going to decrease it back down to one stitch. So yarn up, over, across and down. Okay, so that's either yarn over or yarn over the hook, and then I've got my two stitches on the hook. I'm going to take my hook and scoop it downwards and take it back through. So again, I'm going to the next V, I'm going to put it through both sides of the V, yarn up, over and down, pull back through. I've got 2 stitches on my hook. I've got the hook looking at me and I'm ready to turn it downwards to scoop my yarn back through. So I'm going to do a yarn over, yarn up, over, across, down and behind my work, and then I can scoop my hook back through those 2 stitches and I've brought it back to 1. So 1 more stitch and then I'm ready to turn. So it's hook through both sides of the stitch. Okay, look at that V, I've got the gap between the middle. Then I'm going to take my yarn over, so it's coming up, over, across and down, and then I can scoop my hook back through and I've got 2 stitches on my hook, and then I'm going to take the yarn up, over, across and down, that's my yarn over again, and then turn my hook downwards and scoop it through. Now I've reached the end of my row, I need to turn. So at the end of one row and the beginning of the next row, when you're working double crochet, you'll be making 1 chain. And this is to allow a little bit of height between the end of one row and the beginning of the next, and it will stop your work from pinching. So I'm going to turn my work around, I'm going to miss that chain that I've just made, and then I'm going to work into the next V. So I'm going to take that out and look at it again. So I've got my stitch that's on the hook. The first chain is that chain that I just made to stop my work from pinching, and then I'm going to make my first double crochet in the second stitch from underneath the hook. So I'm going to put my hook through both sides of the V, yarn over the hook, pull back through, 2 stitches on my hook, yarn over, turn my hook down and scoop back through to 1. So 1 more, hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over, pull back through to 2, yarn over, pull back through to 1. So I'm now going to move on to making a double crochet stitch in a straight foundation chain, and then I'll make a double crochet stitch working into a ring. So I'm just making a short foundation chain, and as I make that, if you need help making a foundation chain, I'm going to put a link in here to my video that shows you in greater detail, and I'll also put the same link in the notes below for you. Okay, so when we're looking at our foundation chain, we don't count the stitch that's actually sitting on the hook, and we don't count the tiny little slip knot here at the end, that tiny little knot. And when we look at the chain, we've got these series of V's, which is the right side, and then we've got a series of bumps going down the center of the back. Now there's several ways that you can create your double crochet stitches into these V's. You can either go through both sides of the V's, or you can go through the back bumps, but I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest way to crochet into a foundation chain, and that is crocheting into what becomes the top side of the V's. So when you've made your chain, you're used to looking at it this way, but now you want to turn it to its side, the way that you're going to crochet, and if you look at one side of the chain becomes the top. So what we're doing is we're going to be crocheting into one side of the V, which becomes that top area of the chain. So whenever we're working a double crochet stitch, we always have 1 chain at the side to stop the row from pinching. So we're going to miss that very first chain that's underneath the hook. And we're going to make our first stitch into this top side of the second chain from the hook. So I'm just putting my hook through one side of the chain, and then I put my yarn over the hook, and then I pull it back through to the front, and I've got 2 stitches on my hook, and that's the first half of the stitch made. Then I'm going to take the yarn over the hook again, and then I'm going to scoop my hook back to 1, and I've made my first stitch. Then I'm going to move on to the next chain, and I'm going to work through just one side of the chain, picking up one strand of yarn. So it's yarn over the hook, pull it back through to 2, yarn over the hook, pull it back through to 1. And I'm going to go on again to my third one. You'll see that in actual fact there looks like a hole here. The stitch is elongated where I've worked into it, but don't worry, that will actually settle back down, so don't take too much notice of that. So I'm going to go on to the next V, so I'm going to go through one strand at the side, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 2, I have 2 stitches on my hook, yarn over the hook and pull back to 1. And again, if you look, the stitch that I've just made is pulling a small hole in the foundation chain, but then that is settling down. So I'm going to go into the next one, yarn through one side of the stitch, yarn over, pull back through, 2 stitches on my hook, yarn over and pull back to 1. So I'm going to go again, hook through one side of the stitch, yarn over, pull back through to 2, yarn over, pull back to 1. And when I look at that now, it's creating quite a neat cast on edge in my foundation chain. It's also allowing me, if I want to, I can actually crochet at a later date into the other edge. So if I was making something and then want to come back and put an edging on the bottom, it means that I can work into that stitch from the other side. So I'm now going to make a ring by making a slip knot and 5 chain. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chain, and then I'm joining that into the first chain that I made with a slip stitch. Okay, so now I have this ring that I'm going to be working into. So just like before, whenever you're going to make a row or a round of double crochet stitch, you're going to be making 1 chain at the side to just allow for a little bit of height and to stop the stitches from pinching. But this time when we're working into a ring, we're not working into each individual chain, we're working into this hole in the middle. Okay? So unless the pattern specifically told you to work in the individual chains, which is quite unusual, you would normally be working into this hole. So I'm going to put my hook through the center of the hole and then the yarn over the hook. Now this might feel a bit weird. It might feel as if it's just flopping over the front of the hook, but then you pull the hook back through the hole and you've got your 2 stitches on the hook, yarn over the hook and pull back to 1. Then I'm going to move on again, and I'm going to take my hook, put it through the hole, yarn over the hook, pull the hook back through the hole, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 1. So again, I'm going to do another one, take my crochet hook, put it through the center of that hole, right through the center. The yarn goes over the hook and it sort of flops over the hook. Then I can pull back through and I have 2 stitches on my hook, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 1. Now whenever I'm working a circle, every few stitches I will grab the stitches in one hand and I will grab the actual circle in the other, and I pull them in the other direction. Okay, and that just opens up my hole, it opens up that working area. And do one more, hook through the center of the hole, yarn over the hook, pull it back through to 2, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 1. And again I'm going to hold my stitches in one hand and my chain in the other, and I'm going to just gently pull it open so that I have this hole which is a larger working area to work into, and then afterwards if I need to I can spread my stitches back round a little bit and readjust them. Okay, so I can just work it round. If you're following a UK crochet pattern, the word double crochet is abbreviated to the initials DC. However, if you're using an American pattern, the same stitch has the name of single crochet, and this is abbreviated to SC. If you take a look at the chart symbol is exactly the same. So if you look at a crochet chart and you see this small cross, you know that it's definitely the UK double crochet stitch that you're making. So whether you're totally new to double crochet or this is just a refresher video for you, I hope it's helped you with learning how to make the stitch and developing your techniques. So thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye!